Story 1. My cousin Milo and I had just been dropped off at our grandfather's place for the last stretch of summer break. 2 weeks deep in the Appalachian mountains, way past Elbridge. It's not a town many people know. It's a speck on the map, just a post office, a diner that sells more beer than food, and a church that only opens when it feels like it. Once you pass through, the road turns to gravel, and then that gravel just disappears. Papa's cabin was another mile past that dot to get there. You had to park by a rusted fence and walk the rest of the way in on foot, following a narrow trail that sunk deep into the woods like the trees themselves were swallowing it. No neighbors, no lights, no cell reception. Just this 2-room log cabin, crouching between the trees like it was hiding from something. It smelled like wood smoke and old tools inside. A tiny kitchen with a hand pump for water. A stove that groaned every time you lit it. The bathroom was an outhouse, 20 feet behind the shed, and we had to fill buckets to flush it when it got too full. At night, the forest pressed in on all sides. No curtains. Just wooden shutters. Papa would seal up the house as soon as the sun dipped behind the ridge. He said it kept the heat in, but I think there was more to it. Papa had a million rules and never bothered explaining them. You just followed them, or else. He gave us chores every morning: fetch water, chop wood, gather mushrooms or berries, but only the ones he showed us, and he never joked. He didn't own a radio, didn't have a TV, no books for kids, just a Bible with half the pages missing and a stack of old field guides. He'd tell stories if he'd had a little whiskey, but even then, they weren't fun stories. They were warnings about things found in caves, voices from dry wells. Never entertainment. The first night we were there, he took us to the edge of the clearing and pointed to a line of trees where old iron nails had been hammered in some high, some low, some crooked. All rusty, bent like they'd been used too many times. That's the line, he said. You don't cross it. He made us walk the perimeter every morning. Said it kept the line strong. I asked him once what the line was supposed to hold back. He just looked at me like I'd asked something shameful. Milo thought the whole thing was just an old mountain superstition to keep us from wandering off and getting eaten by a bear. For the first few days, we stuck close to the cabin, but boredom has a way of wearing down common sense. One morning, we were gathering chandles along the creek bed. It was one of the few fun chores, and we were actually getting good at it. Milo mentioned there were bigger clusters further out near a tree with a split trunk, a place we passed the first day. I reminded him that Papa said not to go that far. Milo rolled his eyes. Yeah, and Papa also thinks nails and trees keep the monsters away. I didn't want to look scared, so I agreed, but only after he dared me. We crossed the creek, which barely reached our ankles, and stepped onto the opposite bank. We walked maybe 20 feet past the usual path, and that's when it happened. It was so sudden that at first, we didn't even realize it. The air just stopped. No rustling in the trees. No birds, no insects. It was as if the whole forest had gone silent. I looked at Milo. He looked at me. We both knew something had changed. That's when we saw them. 2 kids standing motionless between the trees. Not walking toward us. Not speaking. Just standing there, like they'd been waiting. The boy looked around our age, maybe a little older. He wore old-fashioned clothes shorts, a button-up shirt, suspenders. His hair was neatly combed, like he'd just been sent off to church. The girl was smaller, maybe 8, in a pale blue dress with a ribbon in her hair. They were both barefoot. Their clothes looked too clean, too pressed. They didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at us, as if we were the last thing they expected to see. I whispered, "Do you know them?" Milo didn't answer. He just called out, "Hey, y'all lost?" The girl tilted her head, like she was trying to figure out the right face to make. She finally said, "We're lost." Her voice was flat. Not robotic, but not quite human either. She seemed to be memorizing her words, like she didn't understand what they meant. "We can't find our way home." I felt a tightness in my chest. The boy stepped forward and asked, "Can you help us?" I took a step back, but Milo didn't. He asked, "Where did you come from?" The girl answered, "We came from below." Her face didn't change. Didn't blink. That's when I saw it. Her eyes completely black. No whites, no color. Just wet, glossy holes staring back at me. My throat closed up. I turned to Milo. His hand shot back, grabbing my wrist. The boy looked at me then, and his eyes were just as black dot. It was like something was wearing their faces. Milo froze. The boy stretched out his hand, and in a voice that wasn't a child's at all, low and slow, dragged through mud, said, "Take us with you. We need to come inside." That was it. My legs moved before I could even think. We ran, no hesitation, no looking back. We didn't stop until we saw the cabin. Papa was sitting on the porch, watching the trees. When he saw us, he stood up and walked to the door, locking it behind us as soon as we stepped inside. Without saying a word, he grabbed a sack we hadn't noticed before. Inside was iron nails, salt, dried herbs, and a tiny glass bottle filled with black liquid. Papa worked quickly, placing nails in the corners of the house, salt under the windowsills, sage stuffed into cracks near the floorboards. When dusk fell, he nailed horseshoes over every door. He muttered under his breath the whole time, not answering when I asked what was going on. "You crossed the line," he said finally. "That's why they saw you tonight." That night, we heard it. Tapping. Not banging, not knocking, just tapping. In pairs. Tap, tap, pause, then again. Never at the doors. Never at the windows. Always on the walls, in places we couldn't see. The next morning, Papa had us wrap every mirror in cloth. "Mirrors give them courage," he said. "If we see them again, it will be through the glass." On the third night, we heard their voices. A girl whispering, "We're cold. We're hungry." Then the boy let us in, over and over. Not angry, not loud. Just asking. Papa didn't sleep. He sat in his rocking chair with a shotgun in his lap, staring at the front door. He didn't blink once. The next morning, we found footprints, small, bare feet, deep impressions in the ground. Too deep for children's weight. Like something heavy was pressing down from above. Papa didn't wait. He packed our bags and told my dad we were sick from the well water and needed rest. He stayed behind. Said there was one last thing to do. We never saw him again. Days later, my dad called the sheriff. A search team went up. They found the cabin burned to the ground, nothing around it touched. No fire in the trees, just ash and stone. In the center of the ruins, sitting in the dirt, was the glass bottle. Still full. Still sealed. No one could explain how it survived. We don't talk about Papa much anymore. Story 2. I was walking back from my buddy Harris's place, out in the hills behind Mallory Ridge. That stretch of road I'd taken 1,000 times before. The kind of late where the world starts to look different. Driveways seem deeper. Mailboxes start resembling people until you get close enough to see they're not. Small town stuff, you know? The kind of place where folks wave from their porches, even if they don't know you. And everyone has a story about who used to live in which house, or whose dog always chases cars. I was cutting across the edge of someone's driveway, just a little shortcut I always used, a triangle of gravel that saved me a few steps. And that's when I saw them. 2 kids, standing perfectly still at the edge of the driveway, shoulder to shoulder, facing the road like they were waiting for someone. They looked normal at first: hoodies, jeans, nothing out of the ordinary, but something about the way they were standing was wrong. Too still. They weren't fidgeting or shifting weight like kids normally do. It was like someone had hit pause on them. I slowed down as I noticed them, more out of curiosity than anything. Maybe they were waiting for a ride, or for their parents to call them in. But as I got closer, one of them stepped forward a few feet. The air seemed to tilt when he did. His voice came out flat. "Come with us." It wasn't a friendly request, no smile, just a hollow command. It didn't sound like a kid's voice. Either it sounded practiced, older, maybe too deep. I stopped walking, squinting at them, trying to figure out if I knew them. I asked where they lived, if they were okay. They didn't answer like normal kids would. No hesitation, no blinking, just, "Come with us." The second kid echoed it, same tone, like they'd rehearsed the line. That's when I noticed their eyes. Not just dark, but fully black. No whites, no pupils. Just round, shiny, stone-like eyes staring straight at me. It wasn't like they were wearing contacts. It looked wrong, unnatural, like something pretending to have eyes. My heart skipped a beat. I took a step back without meaning to. The second kid moved closer, repeating the words, "Let us in." There was nowhere to let them in. No house, no door, just gravel, cracked pavement, and me. But they said it again, "Let us in." This time, the words hit like a punch to the chest. It didn't make sense, and somehow, that made it worse. I tried to brush it off, like it was some weird prank, but my voice was shaking as I asked their names, where they lived, if someone was waiting for them. Nothing. They just stood there. Same posture. Same words. Their voices felt distant, like they came from somewhere far away. Then I heard a soft shift of gravel behind me. I turned. There was another kid, standing just across the road in the shallow ditch, staring. Same eyes, same expression. Just staring. Now, there were three. My chest tightened, like I'd been running, even though I hadn't moved an inch. My feet started moving again, briskly, not quite running, but fast enough. And they moved with me. Same pace, same number of steps, never rushing, never panting, just keeping perfect time with me. I didn't look back until I hit the crest of the hill where the trees opened up into a field. When I turned, they were still there. Not closer, not farther, just watching, like they were deciding how far I'd go before they needed to make their move. I bolted across the field, even though I wasn't supposed to be there. Private property, tall weeds, some half-fallen fence. But I didn't care. I just ran until I saw the yellow porch light of my Aunt Cora's trailer down the next road, and didn't stop until I was standing at her door, bent over, gasping for air. I scanned the road behind me. Nothing. No kids. No footsteps. Just the hum of insects and the flicker of shadows in the trees. I told Harris and a few others the next day. They laughed it off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe someone slipped something into my soda. But I hadn't had anything that night, and it wasn't a dream. After that, I started carrying a flashlight, even in town. I stopped cutting across that driveway. A few nights later, we were out driving, just killing time. Greasy fries in hand, windows down, radio low. When we passed the same driveway, I saw them again. Same spot. Same posture. Same stillness. I didn't say anything at first. Then my buddy Dean nudged me and asked, "Want to turn around?" I said, "No," but it felt like my shoes were filled with lead. After that, I started sleeping with the lights on in the living room. They didn't follow me, didn't chase me, but they lingered. And the more I thought about them, the more I noticed other things. Every time I saw kids at the bus stop or playing tag, I'd catch myself watching their eyes. Just for a second, double-checking. I started checking the back seat of my truck at night, even though I knew it was locked. Once, I babysat my little cousin for the evening. She kept pointing to the big mirror in the hall and saying, "It wants to come in." She was 5. I told her she was just being silly, but when I asked her what it looked like, she said, "Its eyes are all black." I didn't have a response. I just made sure every mirror in the house was covered before bedtime. Eventually, the sightings stopped. Or maybe I just stopped looking so hard. Maybe they moved on. Or maybe they never moved at all. They only came after sunset, when the trees leaned a little too close over the road, and the gravel looked more like dust. They never crossed the edge of that driveway, never got taller than children. But they didn't move like kids. They didn't speak like kids. They just watched, listened, waited. After a while, I started hearing more stories. Bits and pieces passed around in the back of church meetings, or between laundry loads at the laundromat. An old man once told me about toys showing up on porches where no kids lived. A woman by the tracks swore she heard Polite knocking late one night. When she looked out her window, no one was there, but her porch light had gone out. Another guy swore his great-grandfather used to leave a lantern out for the wandering ones, but wouldn't let them step past the threshold. People always told these stories like jokes, but they didn't laugh when they finished. The real test came a year later. My little sister Darcy wandered off during a church supper at the fairgrounds. She turned up crying behind the screen at the drive-in. She said a kid asked her to come with them. She said the voice sounded wrong, but not scary at first. When she said no, the kids just left. No one else saw anything. My parents figured she spooked herself, but when she looked at me and said, "Their eyes didn't look like eyes," I had to walk outside and breathe for a while. After that, I left town. Took a job down near Coldwell. Moved in with a cousin. Didn't look back, especially not after dark. Even now, years later, when I drive through that part of the state to visit family, I take the long way. Keep the radio up. Don't slow down near driveways. I still don't know what they were, if they were dangerous or just practicing something human. But I know what it felt like to have those words aimed at me. Come with us, like a question I was never meant to answer. Story 3. I had been driving since early morning, mostly sticking to winding back roads that cut through the ridges of southern West Virginia. Work had sent me out there. One of the towers had gone quiet, some relay station that serviced emergency bands and barely anything else. It was a strange assignment. Remote, low priority, but somehow urgent. The kind of job nobody wanted, but somebody had to do. I wasn't thrilled about it. The location on the work order was vague. No town. Just a set of coordinates and a note that said, Old Fire Road Access. A guy at the station joked that it was the Forgotten Hollow and that I should pack a lunch and a signal flare. He was only half kidding. By the time the sun started slipping toward the ridge, I still hadn't found the tower. I'd been climbing narrow gravel roads for hours. My GPS gave up long before, and the map on my phone had turned into a gray void with a blue dot floating uselessly in the middle. My fuel gauge was practically kissing. I told myself I'd find a station before I got into serious trouble. But now, in this place, that didn't feel like a sure thing anymore. Then, I came around a sharp curve, and there it was. A faint glow tucked in the woods off the right side of the road. It looked like a dream. The kind of thing that seems too good to be true. It was a gas station, not a good one. Not even a functional one, really. 2 ancient pumps under a sagging canopy, paint peeled down to raw wood in places. The station itself was squat, square, cinder block construction with a few grimy windows and flickering yellow lights above them. The whole place looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 60s, but it had lights. Maybe gas. I pulled in slowly. My tires crunched over gravel so dry and packed it sounded like cracking bones. There was no other car in sight, not even tracks. I got out and walked inside. The door creaked, and a little bell jangled, but nobody answered. The place was dim and smelled like old cardboard and mildew. The kind of stillness that made your skin itch, like the air was pressing against you instead of the other way around. Shelves lined the walls, but most of them were nearly bare. A few cans of beans, expired-looking candy bars, single packs of off-brand cigarettes, caked with age. An old deli case sat under a flickering fluorescent bulb. The glass cracked and streaked. There was no food inside, just a faded plastic tray with a single wrapped slice of cheese, as yellow and curled as the light above it. The cash register was open, empty. No humming fridge, no cooler, no music, no one behind the counter. I stood there for a minute, waiting for someone to come out from the back. Nothing. I called out, "Hey, anyone here?" Silence. I walked behind the counter and checked the card terminal. No power, not even a standby light. My phone still had no signal. 0 bars. The air inside felt colder than it should have, even for dusk. Not cold enough to see my breath, but enough to make my fingers stiff. Then something shifted. Out of the corner of my eye, through the side window, I saw movement. 2 kids were standing just outside. I hadn't heard them walk up. No footsteps. No crunch of gravel. They were just there. A boy and a girl. The boy looked a few years older, maybe 10 or 11. He wore denim overalls that hung off his frame like hand-me-downs from someone twice his size. No shirt underneath, no shoes. The girl had on a pale dress, almost white, with little lace details around the collar and sleeves. It was smudged with dirt and something darker like dried blood. She was barefoot. Both of them looked like they'd walked a long, long way. I raised my hand and gave a small wave. The girl tilted her head like a bird, trying to figure out a noise. The boy didn't move at all, just stared. Something about the way they stood bothered me. They weren't pressed to the glass.